You're going to want to stay tuned for this one.
Today we have a very special guest. His name is Andy Stevens. He is the VP of Operations for Grassroots North Carolina. He is also the North Carolina State Director for Gun Owners of America. So, Mr. Stevens, thank you so much for coming on today. Tell us a little bit more about you, what you do, and your organizations that you represent.
All right. Well, good morning. Nice to meet you guys, and happy to be on the program this morning. Again, my name is Andy Stevens. I am the VP of Operations and the Director of Legislative Affairs for Grassroots North Carolina. Of course, Grassroots North Carolina is our state's no compromise gun rights organization. We actually wrote the concealed carry law that became law in 1994. So lawful concealed carry has been part of North Carolina existence for almost 30 years now. I've been associated with the organization for about the last 10 years, having met Mr. Paul Vallone, the president of GRNC, back in the halls of the legislature when this time 10 years ago we were attempting our last best opportunity to repeal the pistol purchase permit. And that's when we had Republican supermajorities in both chambers, and we had a Republican governor. But unfortunately, we had a Republican governor that was not willing to repeal the bill. And even though it was included in early legislation, what actually passed, which was House Bill 937 back in 2013, gave us restaurant carry, gave us a lot of good things. But the House, under the leadership at the time of House Speaker Tom Tillis, and at the request of Republican Governor Pat McCrory, they took pistol purchase permit repeal out of the legislation, and we did not get it. We've suffered unnecessarily these last 10 years because of those two individuals. And if I ever have anything to do with seeing that neither one of them ever sees election again, I will do my best to see to it that those two anti-Second Amendment rhino Republicans never get another elected office again. My association with GOA goes back about 3 years now. And I will state for the record that in both organizations, I am an unpaid volunteer. The gun banners always like to say that we're all, paid for and participants of the gun lobby. Well, we're not. We're individuals that actually are concerned about our constitutional rights. And I took the position with GOA specifically saying that I would be an unpaid volunteer. All of our members in Grassroots North Carolina are unpaid volunteers. We do not take paychecks. There are some people in GOA, obviously, that do, but I will state for the record that I accepted the position on the proposition that I would not be paid for my services, that I'm doing this as a volunteer, as a citizen concerned about my constitutional rights.
That is absolutely great. That's what we're all about. And we need more people like you that have the experience, the know-how, and the contacts to make sure that bills do not get any further that trump on every law-abiding citizen in North Carolina. And also, we want to pass the good legislation. So could you walk us into what we're looking in the future as of right now in North Carolina as far as gun legislation?
Certainly, and I'll also state for the record that we need younger people such as yourselves active in this effort as well. Again, the perception of the gun rights people is it's a bunch of old white guys, but actually, women are the largest percentage of new gun owners and concealed carry permit holders within the state and across the country as well. We've had 5 million new gun owners who purchased their first firearm in the last year and a half or so because of the deteriorating condition of personal security. the defund the police organizations and everything else. Yesterday information came out about the school shooting in Texas, where because one lone gunman with supposedly indestructible AR-15 stood off an entire trained cadre of personnel who took a very pretty picture saying how they were such an effective SWAT team with all the same equipment, body armor, and ballistic protection that the perpetrator in that incident did not have. But to get to your point about legislation in North Carolina, it does require constant vigilance because, again, even with favorable majorities of conservatives, sometimes some of them are not willing to step outside of their comfort zone and take on tasks that might be deemed controversial. Mm-hmm. Certainly passing the repeal of the pistol purchase permit fits in that category because, again, with Republican supermajorities and a Republican governor 10 years ago, we could not get it accomplished. We did not have the support of the North Carolina Sheriff's Association back in those days. Last session, we tried to pass what we called House Bill 398, which was pistol purchase permit repeal. We had developed a working relationship with the president of the North Carolina Sheriff's Association at that time. Strange story, but in my position at GRNC, I get invited to speak at a lot of events from time to time. And a couple of years ago, I was invited to become the guest speaker at the Transylvania County Republican Party convention. And at that time, I met the sheriff of Transylvania County, Sheriff Mahoney, who ultimately became the president of the North Carolina Sheriff's Association. And we had rather long discussions. I introduced him to Paul Vallone, president of GRNC, and we've developed a working relationship where we basically got them to finally agree that the legislator had made changes to clerks of the court reporting procedures that we no longer needed to have a sheriff individually assess whether or not you're a morally good person to receive a pistol purchase permit, because the NICS system now had all the information, to include health data information, reported on a timely basis, so that the NICS system, which we've always used for long gun purchases in North Carolina, could also serve the purpose of satisfying the requirement that a lawful, non-prohibited person is purchasing a firearm through a licensed FFL. This year, we have a number of bills that advanced early on. Ultimately, the bill that became the bill that we're considering right now, and within 3 days of passage, if the governor doesn't veto it, is the vehicle Senate Bill 41. Now, the House had proposed similar bills, and the Senate proposes similar bills. Of course, the legislative process requires that a bill pass through both chambers before it gets engrossed and sent up to the governor for his consideration. Senate Bill 41 actually took three separate bills and consolidated into one bill. The first component, of course, is repeal of our 1919 103-year-old Jim Crow racist statute called the pistol purchase permit. Secondly, we included language in the bill that we call the church carry loophole. For the last 30 years, it has been legal for a concealed carry permit holder to go to a church worship service and carry concealed, as long as that church did not have an associated school with it. Because the fact that a school that takes place during the week, during times that the church worship service is not in session, our definition in North Carolina statute called that entire facility at all times and anything associated with it a school facility, which made it a felony prohibition to carry concealed anywhere on what would then be considered school grounds. The provision in this bill, Senate Bill 41, that has now passed, will equalize the playing field, so that if you're one of the 500 or so attendees of a church in North Carolina that has a associated school function, as opposed to the 15,000 or so that do not, you will be able, if this bill does become law, to not have to worry about becoming a felon because some district attorney in some progressive leftist-leaning county decides that they want to prosecute you for providing self-protection for yourself and the fellow petitioners. The third thing that's included in this bill is an initiative for safe storage, and we certainly can agree that safe storage is an appropriate thing to do. If you're an owner of firearms, you want to do everything you can to protect it and to keep them out of the hands of people that do not. However, the left wants to turn that into something that turns the victim of a crime into a criminal themselves. They want to say, you must store your firearm in a locked facility. You must take your ammunition out of it and store it separately. Well, it becomes worthless then as a self-defense tool. We need to, if we have individuals in our homes that are young children, for example, we need to teach them respect for firearms. And respect for firearms is something that was taught in the public schools in my generation. I'm again an older guy back going into schools even into the 60s. Firearm safety was taught. Nowadays, you go to a public school, and if you eat your Pop-Tart into the configuration that looks like a handgun, you get banned and expelled from the school. So we need to go back to a more common sense standard of respect for firearms. This initiative does not mandate storage. It just encourages storage. There's a secondary bill that we see, we hope will move forward in the legislature that actually will provide some tax credits and tax incentives for providing storage mechanisms. For example, safes. It won't be just run-of-the-mill stuff, but if you have a collection of firearms such as I do, you want them to be properly protected. So I have adequate safe protection that's not only fire rated but difficult, bolted to the floor, bolted to the wall. That's not going to allow someone to break in and easily steal valuable firearms. But there is a bill that we expect to move in the near future in the legislature that will provide you a tax credit or make it tax exempt so that you can go buy your Liberty Safe, or you can buy something that again will make it a little easier for you to do the right thing, because many of us don't have all the funds necessary with the inflation going on in the world to be able to buy things we need to have or want to have. We just got to be able to provide gas for our cars to go to work and food on our table so we can eat each day. So those are two important bills, I think, that we'll see passed. In regards to Senate Bill 41, we have passed it and sent it to the governor. It went to the governor last week on the 16th. He can do one of three things. He can veto it, which many of us expect, because of course he is an anti-gun governor. He would take one of these bills that the left has proposed that takes away Castle Doctrine, that takes away your right to own the 205 listed California criminal firearms possessions. He would take away your standard capacity magazines. He would ban your AR-15 style firearms. But so he can certainly veto the bill, and he has 10 days in which to consider doing that. We're up to day 8 today, I think, day 7 or day 8 of that process. However, we now have a supermajority in the North Carolina Senate. That means that whether he vetoes the bill or not, the Senate will be able to pass a veto override. We are within one vote this year of a supermajority in the North Carolina House. And we at both GOA and GRNC worked very hard this past election cycle to make that happen. We were short 3 votes in the House last session. That's why, even though we passed House Bill 398, it never went to a veto override, because even though 2 Democrats at that time had voted for it, we did not have the necessary supermajority, even if they held to pass the bill. In today's environment, we only need 1 vote out of the Democrats to override Governor Cooper's bill. On Senate Bill 41, we received 3 votes from Democrats in the House, those being Representatives Marcus, Representatives Ray, and Representative Willingham. Representative Willingham is publicly on record as having said that any bill that he votes for passage in the House, he would vote the same way if it was returned to him by the governor for a veto override. So we only need 1 of those 3 individuals to pass the bill. In the last week, there were 2 controversial bills, not necessarily related to firearms, but were vetoed by the governor in the past. One having to do with riots and turning a demonstration into a riot, which he vetoed, and the other one being a bill on residency requirements in hotels. These bills were previously submitted in previous sessions. They were vetoed by the governor. They received at least one Democrat support in the House. The governor decided he was not going to risk his veto override record with even just one Democrat, the minimum necessary to pass those two bills. So he allowed those two bills to pass into law this past week without assigning a veto to them. Certainly, he did not sign the bills. He's not indicating that that he encourages the bill. But our legislative process does allow for a bill to become law after 10 days if it sits on the governor's desk without him taking any action. Again, with our particular bill that we're concerned with today, we have three bills. I spoke with the clerk in the House yesterday. I was in Raleigh. I spoke with the three Democrats yesterday in Raleigh or their staffs, and first of all, thank them for their votes and encourage them to consider holding their vote if necessary. So we're fairly confident that if an override is necessary, we have it. There's a tremendous amount of political pressure being applied in the backstory on this. Again, the anti-gunners, of which Governor Cooper is a leading proponent, they don't want anything to pass that's pro gun rights. But I think they see the handwriting on the wall. I mean, he's a calculating political animal. He doesn't hope. Well, I hope he doesn't see any political value in continuing a fight he's going to lose. He's had an enviable record in North Carolina. He has had the most vetoes sustained of any governor in North Carolina history. Funny thing is, it's probably the second most governor that saw vetoes overridden was, again, Pat McCrory back when we had a Republican supermajority. Yep. And Pat McCrory didn't like things that our conservative supermajorities did back 8, 10, 12 years ago. So I'm very optimistic that this bill will pass over the weekend. Our deadline is the 26th, which I believe is Saturday or Sunday morning. I was, again, told by the House staff that Cooper generally doesn't do things at the last minute on weekends. So we may very well know tomorrow, Friday afternoon, he may hold a press conference just to indicate he's letting the bill pass, or if he decides to veto it, he'll make his statement at that time. But again, if he does go with a veto, we will override it. It's just a meaningless, futile exercise on his part at this point.
Is this a sign of good things to come?
Well, temporarily, it's a sign of this coming to pass. We have a couple other bills in the hopper. Again, I talked about the tax incentive for purchasing security for firearms. Very good chance that has bipartisan support. We have a constitutional carry bill. House Bill 189 is in the hopper. It will pass both chambers of the legislature. I don't know that we'll have in this case support for an override of the governor. So again, we're still one critical vote short in the House. We have a companion bill to constitutional carry that would provide for North Carolina residents a lifetime concealed carry permit. It doesn't offer all the benefits of a true concealed carry permit. It doesn't allow for reciprocity. It doesn't allow for you to bypass an NICS system as the current CHP does by showing your permit. But for somebody that doesn't want to go through the routine of every 5 years having to renew and doesn't plan to travel in states where reciprocity would be necessary, a lifetime CHP would be something certainly that would avoid having to go back and forth through your county sheriff. Our system in North Carolina, utilizing the county sheriffs, is both a good thing and a bad thing. If you happen to live in a county with a good conservative constitutional sheriff, it's no big deal. I live in Stokes County. Every year I go and test the purchase permit system. I went the other day to my sheriff in Stokes County. I was in and out with 5 permits in my hand in under 30 minutes. In Mecklenburg County, we had to sue the Mecklenburg County Sheriff, we being GOA and GRNC, we had to sue them to actually issue permits at all during the last year and a half. We had to sue the Wake County Sheriff twice in the past year and a half to issue pistol purchase permits. We are currently have an active suit against the Mecklenburg County Sheriff against his denial and delay in issuing concealed handgun permits. He is 7,300 applications behind, or he was here just a month or two ago, in issuing concealed handgun permits to residents in Mecklenburg County. If you are a Mecklenburg County resident and you wish to get a concealed carry permit for the first time through the Mecklenburg County Sheriff, whether or not you ever served in the military, he is sending a request to the VA in Washington to ask that they verify that you're not a mental defective. Now, the VA is overworked and overtasked as it is, just trying to take care of veterans that truly deserve their services. He is burdening their system with requests that they have no obligation, number one, to answer. If you're not a veteran, the Veterans Administration has no knowledge about you. They have no obligation to say to anybody that they have no knowledge about you. Mm-hmm. So basically, they don't return a query, and he uses that as an excuse. Well, I haven't received a mental health check from the provider, and so I'm not going to issue your permit. We expect to win that lawsuit against the Mecklenburg County Sheriff. Problem with lawsuits is it takes a long time. Mm-hmm. The lawsuit that we won against the Mecklenburg County Sheriff about pistol purchase permits took 8 months for a judge to finally make a decision. You know, during that 8-month time period, we were still not seeing permits being issued on a timely basis. So again, repealing the pistol purchase permit will level the playing field for all North Carolinians, regardless of what county you live in. You will go to the point of sale. You'll go to the FFL. You will have an almost instant decision in 99% of the cases. In some cases you may be delayed if you're being confused with some felon in the system. And of course, if you are indeed a prohibited person, you will be found to be prohibited, and your request for the purchase will be denied. The proponents of repealing the pistol purchase permit, such as myself, have always indicated to the gun banners that this is actually a good thing. Because why? Because if you're issued a concealed carry permit in North Carolina or a pistol purchase permit, it's good for 5 years. In that 5-year time, you could become a prohibited person. You could go commit a crime, be charged, convicted, and you would still have in your possession that pistol purchase permit good for a date up to 5 years from the time it was issued. You could walk into any FFL. Any FFL will use that permit, even though you're currently prohibited. They won't run there's no need and no requirement to run a current check that the system would indicate, well, yes, 5 years ago you were a good guy, but today you're a bad guy. So actually, for those people that want to claim that we're making the system worse and suddenly the state's going to be flooded with a bunch of prohibited people getting firearms, we're actually going to find that we're going to stop people that have permits issued 5 years in the past. A few years ago, we had a study done, and it was only done one time. But I think the Charlotte Observer was actually the person that requested it. They found that they found at least 2,600 prohibited people had a currently issued pistol purchase permit when they last did a review of that. So again, repealing the pistol purchase permit for those anti-gunners is not going to flood the system with prohibited people suddenly getting firearms. Criminals will continue to get firearms as they always have done. That process is not going to change, but it will equalize the playing field so that if you live in Stokes County, such as myself, and you get a permit issued in 20 minutes, it doesn't penalize the hundreds of thousands of citizens in Wake and Mecklenburg counties who have been denied permits arbitrarily because the sheriff had the ability to do so in the past.
Yeah, and you were talking about SB 41 earlier, and it made me think. I was talking to Pastor Ron Beatty. He has a church with a school on church campuses, and he was telling me how it is so aggravating to have the government look over your shoulder whenever all you want to do is protect the kids in your school on church campus.
Very, very aggravating. And to his credit, when these bills were being heard in committee, he brought a group of fellow pastors, and they were willing to speak up and stand up for their rights in committee. And again, for people, especially the younger viewers who may be watching your podcast here, it is important to get involved with your government. Don't assume your government's going to do anything for you. The government is basically just going to be a burden most of the time, but it requires active participation. It requires, unfortunately, having to go to Raleigh. It requires having to wait in line so that you can speak and be heard. That's the only way we get these things done. Again, I've been in Raleigh now since the session started in January, probably just about at least once every week, either talking to legislatures, working with them on bill development, or going before the committee. Paul Vallone, the president of GRNC, and myself were at the Rules Committee hearing that released Senate Bill 41 to the House floor. We were the only two speakers that day that came to speak in favor of the bill. Now, considering the fact that the anti-gunners sent nobody at that point, that was another good sign. But the anti-gunners are headquartered in Raleigh, and they always show up at the committee hearings. If you watched any of the proceedings of the floor debates, you'll see people such as Representative Pricey Harrison reeling off all these phony statistics about kids being killed and how guns in Missouri, when they went to permitless carry, suddenly increase. They make up their own statistics, and if no one else goes in to speak and counter them, that's the message that the media picks up, and that's the media transmits, and the media is biased against gun owners to begin with. I think there's several editorials out still by media people saying that the governor should repeal Senate Bill 41 because they're just, it's just a lockstep with them. They do not want to see rights advanced. They're all about the First Amendment when they want to be able to publish what they want, but they don't care about the other amendments in the Bill of Rights, and they really don't care about the Constitution at all either. To many of them, it's a worthless old piece of paper that needs to be either thrown away or at a minimum updated to fit the modern world, so to speak.
Yes, it's no secret that especially the majority of the Democrats, especially in Raleigh, do not care about the First Amendment only whenever it's to publish something on WREL that benefits them and whatever they're pushing. So that is why, as you stated, it's so important for young people to get involved, local, state, and federal, because we need young conservatives with Christian values at a very young age to push for good legislation such as what Mr. Stevens is bringing up today.
Well, and I just want to make this point about Democrats and the polarization of politics. Back when concealed carry was made legal in North Carolina was run by Democrats. This is something that people don't understand. Back in those days, there was opposition mostly from Democrats, but Democrats were responsible for passing lawful concealed carry back in 1994. We've had over the years, we at GRNC have what we call our Remember in November voter education. We survey every candidate running for office. They send out surveys. We monitor their voting records, and we send out every election cycle an objective evaluation. We rate them GRNC 0 through 4 stars. Over the years, if you go back and you look at those, you will see where Democrats were reasonably gun friendly in years past, but increasingly the polarization in politics, there is not a single, well, today I would say there's 3 Democrats that actually are breaking the mold. But I would point out to Democrats that are considering, running for political office, part of the reason they're in the minority in the government, and part of the reason that they're soon going to be less than a supermajority and have absolutely no influence, is because they take such extreme positions on things such as common sense gun rights, and instead promote what they call common sense gun control. There may be some changing in that taking place. There were 6 Democrats that actually voted separately in the House to pass the church carry provision. So again, we're seeing a little bit. I think maybe some of them are realizing the handwriting on the wall, and perhaps are going to go to a more middle ground, because when you talk to Democrats as people, you find out they are gun owners. You find out that they are concerned about their safety, but they just go in lockstep with these extremists that they elect, that they really don't. If you talk to them honestly, you really don't expect them to actually believe the things that they're being supporting of by supporting these candidates. You're also seeing, the big change in both parties losing registered participants going to the unaffiliated bunch. And again, those people are going to vote maybe a little bit for progressive type values in some cases, but many of them are going to vote conservatively. And common sense, what I call common sense gun rights, is something that far more people in North Carolina agree on than their version of common sense gun control. I failed to mention yesterday a new bill dropped in the Senate, a bill that would allow actually the arming of volunteers at the discretion of the owners of private schools. And again, this would affect church schools and may, if passed, allow protection in those private schools, not public schools, but private schools associated with churches and perhaps some charter schools. That bill just got dropped in the Senate. It has the same sponsors that sponsored Senate Bill 41. Senators Perry, Britt, Daniel. Senator Buck Newton is also signed on as a sponsor of that bill. We'll see if it has the ability to again garner Democrat support in the House. These Democrats are under tremendous pressure to stick to what their party wants, and that may be a stretch. Looking in the future, we have an election coming up next year. We have the opportunity to elect a conservative Republican governor, and we have the opportunity to grow our conservative delegations in both the House and the Senate. So while you don't want to talk about politics and elections all the time, it's going to be an early season because it's a presidential year and the primaries are going to be coming up. Candidates are already announcing for the various spots, and more will be doing so in the future. But my long range expectation is we will see Bill 41 passed. We'll see the tax provisions I talked about passed. We'll see the other bills reach the governor's desk, but perhaps not get past it this year. I'm looking forward to a conservative Republican governor seated in 2024 that will sign constitutional carry and some of these other things that will truly make us in North Carolina first in freedom again. 26 states have permitless carry or constitutional carry. Today, Florida is moving very quickly towards becoming the 27th. And wisely, they're adding open carry to their concealed carry provisions, which is raising the blood pressure of the left on that matter today. But keep an eye on Florida in the next couple of days, and Governor DeSantis will make Florida the 27th constitutional carry state, I believe.
We really need North Carolina to be the 28th. That's
we
what
really
we need.
do.
And so whenever stuff like this comes out and it does pass, contact the lawmakers, Republican or Democrat, that voted for this. We need to do everything we can to encourage good legislation to go through and to be passed and made into law.
And on that regard, I'll put in a plug for my organizations at this point because I write in many cases I write the GOA alerts that go out under my name. You don't have to be a member of Gun Owners of America to get our alerts. You don't have to be a member of Grassroots North Carolina, the state's organization, to get our alerts. You can go to our websites, whether it be gunowners.com, .org for GOA or grnc.org for GRNC here in the state, and sign up to get our alerts. We'll have an alert out today, for example, asking people to call Governor Cooper and ask him to allow Senate Bill 41. It gives you all the information you need. All you got to do is it gives you the phone number. It'll give you the text of an email you can send to him if you feel strongly about it. GOA does the same thing on a national basis, and like I say, as the state director, I see to it that that our membership is kept abreast. But again, you can sign up for the alerts without having to actually become a member. GOA is doing great work. It's nowhere near the size of the NRA, but you know what? The NRA is facing other issues right now, and they've been absent in this fight in North Carolina. You
Yeah.
will not be able to find a person from NRA that can tell you, like I can tell you, that I've been to the legislature and I've talked to these individuals and I've been in the committees. They're simply they're out of the fight right now because they're dealing with lawsuits in New York and some other things. There's some other organizations in the state that like to ask you for their money that say that they're doing great work as well. But again, you know, they're not. And again, in plugging my two organizations, we're all volunteer. We do require money to operate. It costs money to make position papers and distribute them to all 170 members of the legislature. It takes time and effort that we give freely, but it also requires expense. Sending out emails to thousands of people month after month costs money. Email is not free when you're doing it on that basis. So again, I would encourage viewers, if you feel strongly about the good work that we're doing, help us out. We're always looking for volunteers, but we can also use your money. And your money, if donated or given to our organizations, will be spent wisely, and we will make the maximum use of it. Like I say, without our efforts, is being there and standing watch and taking names and sometimes having to tell people that don't want to do something out of their comfort zone to do it. We wouldn't get any of this legislation through, and we see bad legislation pass. So again, we encourage everyone, especially your younger viewers, to step up and join. Everybody had a first day, and everybody, 10 years ago, I didn't know what the heck I was doing either. But and I need before I get too much older to pass on my knowledge to someone that can carry on for me as well. So we appreciate the opportunity to reach new viewers, interested people, and we encourage you in return to come join us so that we can school you and get you all suited up and geared up and equipped to fight the left, because this battle will not end. If we think that we pass constitutional carry, if we think that we repeal the pistol purchase permit, there are bills that the Democrats have in the hopper today that aren't seeing the light of day, that if we lose those conservative majorities, they'll turn around and they'll repeal castle doctrine. You won't be able to protect yourself in your own home. They'll take away your assault weapons, that they described as the California list of 205 weapons. They will deny you the opportunity to have a standard capacity magazine because they feel you're not entitled to anything more than 6 or 7 rounds like they do in New York. So this fight will not be over. It's not a win. It's a constant battle, and it will require future patriots to step up and keep those objectives in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are very glad of all the work that GRNC is doing, as well as GOA. I get notifications from both, and they are absolutely on point, and they tell you what you need to know when you need to know it. So if anyone here is watching, you can go follow them there.
Well, and thank you guys, and be more than happy as the legislative season moves on, like I say, or other things come about. Obviously at the federal level, we're talking about bump stop bans, and we're talking about, the 40 million of us who may or may not be a felon in possession after May 31st, because we may or may not have something that the ATF may or may not consider in their own mind. They don't know what the hell to call a rifle themselves, because they had to write a 293-page document that basically, I think, in the end, just says anything you own is an illegal short-barreled rifle unless you bow your knee, pay your fine, and submit to government regulation. So, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I look forward to talking to you again as the need may come up. Feel free to call me anytime, and let your viewers know as well if you have any questions. Like I say, either contact our organizations, contact me through Twitter. We want to be your as you said, answer man. We do try to keep the rules in our heads, and again, we at GRNC can confidently state that we wrote the laws that are in force on the books. We have been involved in virtually everything that has passed that has been in pro-gun since 1994. So again, gentlemen, thank you for having me on today. I do appreciate it.